Hi, I'm Lonna Kelly. Welcome to It's Your Move. Today we're going to be talking to Lisa Tarricone from Westchester Independent Living Center. And our topic for today is going to be a pretty hot one come November because with the presidential election coming up and a lot on the line for voting, we're going to talk about the accessibility of polling sites and what to do if you need an accommodation. And Lisa is our resident expert on that. Lisa, thanks for coming today.
Thanks for having me, Lana.
You're welcome. So, what is accessibility? Well, could you just briefly explain that, what that means?
Okay. So every voter, including people with disabilities, is entitled to a private and independent vote. And that includes access to the poll site and access to the ballot. Every poll site in New York State is required to be accessible for folks with disabilities. There needs to either be a ramp or some means for folks to enter the poll site. Parking needs to be provided. If there are no accessible spaces in a parking lot where the poll site is located, a temporary parking space needs to be implemented. And then there's the ballot. We have.
Let me just stop you for a minute. Are there really some places that still don't have accessible sites, still don't provide that entryway that people might need to get in?
Even though we have the poll site access bill that was passed several years ago that requires and mandates all poll sites be accessible, there are still problems that we encounter. Oftentimes we see that it's a maintenance issue. Sometimes an accessible door is locked, a temporary solution is not implemented, or poll worker training is not up to speed.
Okay.
So poll workers might not know how to accommodate people with disabilities appropriately. Okay,
so then once you get in, what can you expect? Or what should you have access to if you need accommodations?
Sure. Well, we all know that in the old days, not that long ago actually, there were lever machines, and now there are ballot marking devices, BMD machines. As the result of HAVA, which was implemented in 2002, the Help America Vote Act, that statute was designed to standardize voting systems across the United States, which includes accessible voting for people with disabilities in addition to other measures. So every polling site has to have an accessible voting machine. Here in New York State and in Putnam and Westchester counties, we have the ballot marking device, or the BMD. We also have optical scanners. So for people who vote, I'm hoping everyone votes, the experience is you were given a ballot, you fill out the little ovals on the ballot, and you insert it into a scanner, which is like an X-ray machine. It scans your ballot and securely casts your vote. If you need assistance marking the ballot, if you're a person with a disability, say you're blind, you have a mobility issue, the ballot marking device is there to help you do that. And it's not just for people with disabilities, it's for anyone who has difficulty filling in that little oval and not going outside the lines. So that ballot marking device has several adaptive features to it. So say you have a visual impairment and you cannot see the ballot, you can wear a headset, and the ballot marking device will walk you through and help you navigate the ballot and help you to, and then you would speak your choices into the machine, and the machine would mark your ballot. When you're finished with marking your ballot, and that also goes for someone with a mobility issue, there's a little tactile device that you can press with your fingers if you can't reach. The lever machines were not accessible to people with disabilities because it required reaching. A lot of people couldn't reach the upper levels, levers. They couldn't really see the ballot, the top lines of the ballot.
Right. Yeah. They had standing up, and it had to be at your eye level.
Exactly.
To be able to see it.
Exactly. Yeah. And there was no way to really enlarge the information.
Right.
The ballot marking device, by the way, can also do that. It can change contrast. It can enlarge the ballot. It can shrink the ballot as well, the font size. So, and then after you're finished casting your vote, the ballot marking, the BMD will read it back to you and to verify that everything was correct, and then you will cast your ballot. And it takes a little longer than it would do to scan, but it does provide people the option of an independent and private vote, unlike the lever machines.
Right. And can anybody use those?
Anybody can use it.
I mean, a lot of people, I know somebody, say, who has a very bad eyesight might not consider themselves, they might not say, oh, I have a disability, but they might say, well, I can't read the ballot.
Sure. So I serve as an election inspector. So for the last several elections, I work with different boards of elections to monitor the machines, to make sure that they're used properly, if voters need assistance on them, if poll workers have questions. And oftentimes I see folks, 3 strikes and you're out when you mark a ballot. Because of the little ovals, and they're kind of hard to mark, when you scan them and you go outside the line, it's called an ambiguous mark, and the scanner will spit it back out. You only get 3 times.
Right.
After that, you lose your vote, lose your opportunity to cast a ballot. So the ballot marking device, if you have your hand shakes, you can't, you're a little intimidated by filling in the oval, the ballot marking device can mark it for you, and you don't have to really worry about that. So anybody can use it.
But is it easy to use? Does somebody have to be with you to show you how to use it? Do the poll workers have to be trained to do this?
The poll workers, the machine is self-explanatory. It will help you, the voter, once it's, again, a private independent vote. So once you request to use the BMD, the machine will actually provide you instructions on how to use it. As an election inspector, should there be any issues with that, if the voter needs clarification, there is a poll worker, there is somebody at the site to assist that voter, and the poll workers themselves can do it as well.
Right, and could I be fairly confident anywhere I go to vote that this equipment is going to be available?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Yes. It's mandated. It has to be available.
It has to be.
Yes.
I know I checked the last time I voted, and I asked them if they have what they have, and did they have all this stuff, and they said yes, and they showed it to me, and
Great.
I was relieved.
Excellent.
To see that my town had it.
That's great. Yeah. That's great.
So Lisa, what happens if for some reason you can't get out and you can't, that on the day of the election you're not going to be able to get out to vote? You could vote absentee. The thing with an absentee ballot is you need to register ahead of time, and there are some deadlines with absentee ballots. In order to, if you know ahead of time that you want to vote absentee, you need to postmark an application by a certain date. And so I will leave my number at the end of the show, and people can call me because it's a lot of information I don't want to leave here, and I can give anyone that information when those deadline dates are. So for instance, for the congressional primary, which is June 21st, you need to postmark your ballot no later than the 28th, no later than the 21st, which is 8 days. You can also file a vote emergency ballot or an absent or a provisional ballot. So you have to vote ahead of time, basically. So you have to make sure that's almost a week ahead. So
it is.
You have to be kind
Correct.
of aware of that schedule.
You have to know the deadlines for absentee for the application.
And you have to have requested the application prior to that. So you're probably
Correct.
looking at needing to do this several weeks in advance.
Pretty much,
to get started the process.
Sure, and I think that you also need to register in advance. I mean, a lot of folks are confused. If you move, for instance, you have to have lived 30 days you have to be a resident of New York State, of course. You have to have lived 30 days in the village or the county that you're voting in. And if you're under that 30-day deadline or mandate, you can vote, but you just have to vote provisional ballot or emergency ballot. You can go to your polling site and ask for an emergency ballot, but you might not be you probably will not be in the registration books. Okay.
So if people needed to make a phone call to get these absentee ballots, and I know you don't have the numbers, but what county office should they call?
They would call the Putnam County Board of Elections or the Westchester County Board of Elections. And they will have all the information that any questions that can be answered. They can also go on the website to the New York State Board of Elections website site, and that has and all the deadlines. You can actually print out a registration form on that website as well and register that way. You can come to our offices, Putnam Independent Living Service or Westchester Independent Living Center. motor vehicle, you can register that way. There's a lot of different ways you can register to vote.
Right. So that no matter what, people should be able to cast their vote.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And absentee ballot, let me just, I at one time thought that you had to be absent, you had to be out of the country or something, or away. And is that the case? Or
You have to, provide a reason that you want to vote absentee. So folks with disabilities typically will provide that. If you're ill, military personnel. We like to also encourage people with disabilities that it's your right to, oftentimes because of the inaccessibility of polling sites and the machines themselves, people voted absentee. But after the implementation of HAVA, everyone has the right to go into a polling site and vote. If you choose not to, then you can vote absentee. And you can mention the fact that it's an undue hardship to go to the polling site.
Right. So what should you do if, for some reason, when you arrive at the polling site, you can't either access the building or they don't have the equipment that you need, in spite of the fact that it's, by law, they should?
Right.
What do you do?
Well, there are numbers to call. First of all, I've never encountered that. They absolutely have to have that machine. Now, sometimes the machines are broken. Sometimes, we've encountered issues where they're out of paper, or the poll workers just don't know how to use them, or instruct a voter how to use them, or a voter's having difficulty using them. And there is a hotline number you can call, and that number would be, in this area, would be 212-416-8250, and you can register a complaint. You can also call the New York State Board of Elections, and again, I can supply all those numbers to folks. Hotline numbers and local hotline numbers as well, for folks to call. Okay,
so if people could watch for your email address, which is coming up on the screen, and they could get in touch with you that way.
Absolutely.
Or they could get in touch with me also, and I could refer them to you. So any of our emails that you catch, jot them down, and you'll be able to get in touch with us, and we'll give you this information that you'll be needing. This is a big election coming up, so we need to get as many people out to vote as possible, and it'll affect the direction our country is going into for the next 4 years. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you wanted to address, Lisa, about voting?
There's a lot. I think people really need to understand that it's your absolute right to be able to access your polling site, to access the ballot, to be accommodated appropriately, especially for folks with disabilities. And I think I just want to stress that, and that I think a lot of folks that I've worked with just don't realize that it is a right, and that they do have that right to, and how they can actually advocate for themselves, self-advocate. So I would encourage folks to call me. There are a lot of other, areas of voting rights in addition to what we just talked about, that folks would be of benefit to know.
Right.
So you had asked a question, Lonna, earlier a few moments ago about if should they go into a polling site and not be able to vote. There are things you can do even at the site without calling that 212 number. There are courts that are set up, or judges that are willing to hear, especially with this upcoming presidential election. In most counties, I think probably in all counties, there are courts set up where judges will hear instances, grievances, if you're not able to cast a vote for whatever reason.
Okay, I have to cut you off because we ran out of time, and I just want to, besides voting being everybody has the right to vote, everybody has a responsibility to vote as citizens. And thank you so much, Lisa.
Thank you, Lonna, of course.
Great information you provided us with today.
Thanks. Thank you.